She had been coordinating events in this city for 4 years, and she had learned, early, that the most dangerous thing at any gathering was never the person making the most noise. And then the door opened and a pregnant woman walked in and said Kiro Min's name like it was the last word of a sentence she had been holding in her body for months, and the most dangerous person in the room did not look up. Thandiwe had met men who didn't look up because they hadn't noticed. This was not that. The stillness in Kiro Min's hands was the stillness of a man who had already decided before the door opened exactly how he would behave when it did. The gardenias on the table between them had started dropping their petals, not all at once, just one here, one there, the slow, quiet way, beautiful things let go when nobody's paying attention. She turned back to the proteas and started working them in by hand, checking each stem against the height of the vase because nobody else had done it and it needed doing. She had arrived at the resort at 4:30 in the morning, long before any guest had reason to be awake, because that was how she worked. The gate swung open as she got close, that deep, heavy clang of old metal that doesn't care what time it is or who's listening, and she had stopped for 1 full second before she understood it was a delivery vehicle. She always stopped for that sound. Growing up, it had meant someone important was coming home. She had not worked out, yet, what it meant here. The terrace was already half-dressed. Gardenia arrangements placed by the resort's own staff, white petals banked against dark lacquer vases. The proteas she had specified, 24 of them, South African burgundy gold, were in a separate row, waiting to be interwoven. Nobody had interwoven them yet. She jotted it down, not because she would forget, but because writing things down was how she kept herself from having to trust anyone else to remember them. She was checking the 4th item on a list she had already verified twice from her hotel room when she became aware that someone was already at the far table. He was not a staff member. The suit alone told her this. Dark and precisely fitted, gold at the cuff, a quality of stillness in the way he sat that staff simply did not have. He was reviewing something, a single document held with both hands open on the table, and he had not looked up when she entered. She noted this the way she noted everything, clinically, without meaning anything by it yet. He hasn't looked up, she noticed. Good to know, she thought, and moved on. Her phone rang. She silenced it without checking the screen. She crossed to the proteas. She began to interlace them with the gardenias herself, because the person whose job this was had not arrived and the job needed doing. And this was the kind of woman she was, the kind who picked up the thing that needed picking up without waiting to be asked, and called it normal, and did not think too hard about what it cost her to always be the most capable person in whatever room she walked into. She was still thinking about the proteas when the door opened. The woman who entered was Nigerian, by her cloth and by the specific cadence of her carriage, a deep forest green wrap dress, her natural hair loose around her face, one hand at the low curve of her belly. 8 months, perhaps more. She moved the way women move in late pregnancy, with a deliberateness that was not slowness, a kind of purposefulness the body had imposed whether the mind agreed or not. She crossed the terrace toward the far table. She said his name, Kiro Min, not a greeting, not a question. The register of someone who has been building to a sentence for a very long time and has finally decided, in this room, at this hour, in front of the gardenias, that the sentence cannot wait any longer. The man at the table did not look up. Thandiwe had been watching the interaction from the moment the door opened, the way she always watched the things that would require managing, and she understood, in the same instant she processed it, that she had been wrong about the looking. He wasn't looking up because he hadn't noticed. He wasn't looking up because he had already decided before the door opened exactly how he would behave when it did. His right hand, resting open on the table, the document still beneath it, closed. Not a fist, just closed. A specific, private motion that lasted less than a second and then was over, and she was the only person in the room who had seen it because she was always the only person in the room watching the things that no one thought mattered. She turned back to the proteas. She was not going to think about his hands. She was already thinking about his hands. The morning had finished becoming the version of itself that guests would see, the one that looked like nothing had required any effort at all. By 7, the mist was still sitting on the water, and someone in the back kitchen was frying garlic like it was a perfectly normal Tuesday, which honestly made her feel a little better about everything. By 8, 3 groomsmen had wandered through looking for coffee and been redirected by Thandiwe with the specific warmth she used on people who were in her way, without knowing it. By 9, 2 of Kiro Min's men had been standing in front of the head table seating chart for 40 minutes, and were becoming a structural problem. They were Korean, both of them. Mid-30s, dark suits, the particular set of jaw that came from working for someone like the man at the far table. In a dispute about ceremonial precedence, apparently, one that had been running since the groom's family revised the seating arrangement 3 weeks ago. Neither was going to yield. Thandiwe put down her clipboard. She addressed the first man with a specific acknowledgement of his position. Not flattery, not performance, but the precise recognition of status that the Zulu mediation tradition called ukubona, to be seen. She addressed the second man the same way. Then she stated a third arrangement that neither had proposed, framed so that both men could accept it without either of them having to lose anything, and she waited. Both men agreed before either of them fully understood what they had agreed to. She picked up her clipboard. Behind her, one of them said something in Korean she did not understand, and then footsteps moved away. And then the lieutenant, Junho, she had learned his name by 7:15, crossed the length of the terrace toward the man who had not looked up. A formal courtesy followed. One of the men she had just mediated offered it to her. A small bow, a specific phrase. She declined, warmly, clearly. He tried again. She declined a second time with the same warmth, the same clarity, the specific second refusal of someone who will accept on the third offering, a structure her grandmother had called ukuzathiba, the patience that makes the gift meaningful. The man looked at her with the expression of someone who had run out of the social script he had prepared. He walked to Junho. Junho walked to Kiro. Kiro Min received the report without looking at her. Then something almost happened in his face. Not a smile. The muscles around his jaw changed in the specific way they changed just before a smile. And then, nothing. Just stillness. His eyes moved briefly to where she was standing, back to his document. She told herself she had imagined it, which was almost certainly true, and which she was going to keep believing until she had a better reason not to. By 9, the dinner had loosened up, past the part where everyone's still performing, into the part where people are just actually somewhere together. She moved through it the way she always did, everywhere at once, noticed by no one, making sure everything worked so that nobody had to think about whether it would. She already knew which door led where, which staff member was going to be a problem, and roughly what time the whole thing would start to fall apart if she wasn't watching. And she'd figured all of that out before she finished her first cup of coffee. He was at the head table. 4 seats from the groom's father, 3 seats from a man in a pale cream suit who had arrived before the groom's family and sat with the specific pleasantness of someone who had never needed to perform anything because pleasantness was itself the performance. She had cataloged this man at 6:40 when he checked in. Director Junho. She was already 3 steps past his chair when she heard him speak, and she caught just enough of it to know it had been directed at someone else and that she was going to replay it anyway. Bongani said yes, it did. Steady, unhurried, the voice of a man who had sized up the room about 4 minutes ago and was not particularly impressed by any of it. Thandiwe heard this from 3 feet away without appearing to hear it. She was moving. She was always moving. She was thinking about why a guest would ask about the clifftop, and she made herself stop thinking about it because she had 18 things to check before the second course arrived, and none of them were Kiro Min's interest in the geography of the venue. But she was close. Close enough that the evening might have become something else. Close enough that the question he had asked Bongani might have become a question he asked her. She had felt the nearness of it the way you feel a door in the dark, the specific temperature of a frame before you find the handle. And then she had kept walking, not because she needed to, because something in her recognized the weight of that doorway and had decided without consulting her that she was not yet ready for whatever was on the other side. You are here to do a job, she reminded herself, in the firm, no-nonsense tone she used when she was talking to herself like she was someone who needed managing. Bongani wrote something in his notebook. She did not see what. The dinner continued. The candles burned lower. Junho spoke to the man on his left, then the man on his right, then looked at his watch with the expression of a man who already knew the time and was consulting it for the pleasure of confirming it. Kiro did not look at Junho. Junho did not look at Kiro. She noted this and set it aside as not yet her problem and continued running the dinner. Then the dessert was cleared. Guests began to move between tables, the specific social dispersal of a formal dinner approaching its end. Everyone suddenly warmer, looser, the kind of laughter that comes from expensive wine and shared relief that the formal portion is over. She was running through the second course timing in her head when she realized someone had stopped beside her. Ms. Delamini, warm, professional. Your company was highly recommended. Thank you, she said. He paused. 1 beat. precisely calibrated, the way a pause is calibrated when it is doing work. Saifo Dlamini's daughter, I knew his work. Not her company, not her credentials, her father's name, offered as an afterthought, the way you mention a small thing you happen to know. She gave him a sentence about her father, pleasant, short, the kind she kept ready for exactly this type of question, and kept her hands still at her sides while she said it, which took more effort than it should have. He's semi-retired now, she said, in the voice she used when nothing was happening, which was the same voice she used when everything was. Then, if you'll excuse me, and she was already turning before the sentence finished. Junho moved on. She found something wrong with the nearest water glass and fixed it, and kept her eyes there, and did not look at the head table, even though she was aware of it the whole time, the way you're aware of something you've decided not to look at. She picked up her phone and navigated to her event checklist and found 3 items she had not yet verified and began verifying them, and by the time she had finished the second item, her hands had stopped doing the thing she had not been aware they were doing. If you are enjoying this story, I want you to know that you are exactly where I wanted you to be, because what just happened in that room, the way he didn't look up, the way she kept moving, the sound of a name that should have been nothing and was everything, that is only the beginning of what this story is going to ask you to carry. Subscribe. Share this with someone who knows exactly what it feels like to be the most capable person in the room and the loneliest. Turn on the notification bell because part 2 exists and you are going to need it. We're going back in. By 7, the resort had finished becoming the version of itself that guests would see. The one that looked like nothing had required any effort at all. By 7, the mist was still sitting on the water, and someone in the back kitchen was frying garlic like it was a perfectly normal Tuesday, which honestly made her feel a little better about everything. Thandiwe moved through it with her checklist and her coffee going cold, and the specific efficiency she wore the way other women wore perfume, automatically without thinking about it, because it had stopped being a choice a long time ago. She was not thinking about Director Junho's precise pause before her father's name. She was not thinking about Bongani, who had been waiting in the corridor when the dinner ended, his phone already open to a photograph of something he should not have had access to, a document, a guest list, a column of names with financial markers beside them, and one name at the bottom that Bongani had pointed to with one ink-stained finger and said nothing, because Bongani had always understood that some things did not need saying. Saifo Dlamini, her father's name, in a column whose purpose she did not yet understand. She had photographed the photograph, returned the phone, said, I'll look into it, in the specific register of someone who was going to do no such thing right now, because right now she had an 8 o'clock setup call and a secondary vendor infrastructure routed through the wrong supplier contact and needed correcting before the day could begin. Except that when she arrived at the setup station, the vendor infrastructure had already been corrected, perfectly. The routing fixed, the contact updated, a confirmation number in the system that had not been there the previous evening. No note, no name attached, just done. She looked at the confirmation number for 4 seconds, then she moved on. She had 11 things left to verify before 8, and this was one fewer, and that was all she was going to allow it to be. The common terrace was still mostly empty, the resort guests preferring the second cup of coffee in their rooms, the luxury of a morning that belonged to no schedule. She told herself she had come for the light. She was reviewing the ceremony timing on her tablet when she heard the chair move. He was already there. Of course, he was already there. He had been there when she arrived at 4:30, and he had been at the dinner, and now he was here, his own coffee on a table too close to hers for professional comfort, dark navy trousers, the white shirt open at the collar, and the tattoos on his forearms that she was going to stop looking at immediately. The morning had done something to the armor. That was the only way she could explain what she was seeing. The suit was gone, and without it he looked like a man who had agreed to occupy a body rather than one who had designed himself into one. The tattoos were geometric, dark, precise, the kind that meant something to the person wearing them and nothing to anyone who hadn't been told. She had not been told. She looked at her tablet. She looked at the ceremony timing. She looked at the first item on the timing sheet, which was the one she had already confirmed. He made a comment about the wind, how it came off the water differently in the morning than it would by afternoon, like it was just something he happened to know and wasn't particularly looking for a response to. The sea-facing ceremony space, she said. Yes, I've already spoken to the venue about a wind barrier. I wasn't asking. She looked up. He was looking at the sea, not at her. His coffee was on her table. She was not sure when that had happened. The wind off the cliffs at this hour, he said. is different from the wind at the ceremony time. It comes from a different direction in the afternoon." "I know," she said. He said nothing. She said nothing. The sea was audible from the terrace, not loud, just present, the way the sea is always present on an island, constant enough that you stop hearing it and start feeling it in your chest. She recognized the feeling the way you recognize the smell of rain before it actually rains. Not the thing itself yet, just the air changing around it and the quiet knowledge in your stomach that you should probably find somewhere to be before it starts. He will not say it first. The silence between them was the most expensive thing on the terrace. She knew it. She suspected he knew it. Neither of them moved. He stood eventually. He picked up his coffee from her table, which meant he had acknowledged it after all, and yet had still left it there long enough to matter. "And I'll check it," she said, already writing, not looking up, her pen moving to the next line before his sentence had fully finished landing quietly. "The afternoon vendor timing. There may be a second access issue with the East Service Road." He walked inside. She did not watch him go. She was very specifically not watching him go. She looked at the second item on the timing sheet, which was one she had also already confirmed, and she read it with great care. His coffee cup had left a ring on her table. She did not move it. The afternoon arrived warm and salt bright. Thandiwe was checking the ceremony space sightlines from the Clifftop garden for the third time when she heard Bongani behind her. "You checked these twice this morning," he said. She did not turn around. "The light has changed." She heard him writing in his notebook. She was aware without looking of his expression, the specific Bongani expression that was not judgment but was adjacent to it, the face of a man who had grown up with her and knew exactly when she was lying to herself. It was true that the light had changed. It was also true that she had checked the sightlines because it was something to do that required her to be on the clifftop, and she had not examined why she needed to be on the clifftop because there were 11 other things to think about. He arrived 10 minutes later without appearing to have arranged it. He crossed the room like a man who had never once in his life arrived somewhere and surprised anyone by showing up. No document, no phone visible, nothing professional in his hands at all, which was the specific detail that told her this was not a coincidence he was maintaining any effort to perform. She turned back to the sightline. She noted the angle of afternoon light on the stone arch. She made a mark on her tablet that she would not need later. "The ceremony arch needs a half-degree rotation," she said. "Does it? The shadow falls across the groom's position at 4:15 if it stays as it is." He came to stand beside her, looking toward the arch. She was aware of him standing there the way you become aware of warmth from a window you didn't know was letting in sun. Not something you went looking for, just something you suddenly notice is there. The sea was below them, and to the left, the cliff just dropped straight into the water. No beach, no warning, just the island ending and the ocean starting, like neither one felt the need to make a big deal of it. "You grew up near the sea," he said. It was not a question. "KwaZulu-Natal," she said. "The coast." I could tell. He didn't elaborate. She didn't ask him to. She was very aware of not asking him to. The silence that followed had a shape, not the expensive silence of the terrace, something more specific, something that had been waiting to become this particular silence since the morning she arrived. "You handled the seating situation yesterday," he said. "My men told me. They were blocking the setup flow." "They were." He paused. "They also asked Junho if you were a spiritual practitioner." She turned to look at him. He was looking at the arch. Something in his expression was doing the thing that was not quite a smile. The same thing she had seen that first morning, the muscles at the corner of his jaw, the contained quality of something that had almost happened and then hadn't. "I did not imagine it yesterday," she thought. "I am not imagining it now." "Tell them," she said, "that I simply believe in structure." "I'll pass that along," he said. And the almost smile became a fraction more almost, and she had the specific sensation of standing at the edge of something real, not metaphorically, physically at the edge, the stone wall low in front of them, the sea below. And the thing she was at the edge of was not the cliff. He went quiet. Then, "Your father's work was in procurement." She went very still. "You told Junho that last night," he said. "Semi-retired. I heard it." "Yes." "He was based in Durban." not quite a question. The specific register of a man confirming something he already knew, offering her the confirmation as a kind of courtesy, which was its own kind of warning. He is, she said, present tense, deliberate. Kiro looked at the sea. The afternoon session will run well, he said. The arch is fine. He left before she could answer. She stood on the cliff top with her tablet and the unmarked note she had made, and the warmth where he had been standing still present in the air beside her, fading. The arch is fine. He was right. She had known that. She had been on the cliff top for a reason she was not going to name, and he had come for a reason he had not named, and they had both found the arch to discuss instead. He knows about my father, she thought. He knew before the question. He told me so I would know that he knew. That is not the same thing as telling me why. She looked at the sea for a long time. Then she went back to work. The reception was doing exactly what a lot of money had been spent to make it do. Look like nobody had tried very hard, and feel like somewhere you'd want to stay. Thandiwe moved through it with her earpiece in and her close-down checklist beginning to form at the back of her mind, because she was always building the exit strategy while the event was still in its rising action. Seun arrived without announcement, not dramatically. There was no entrance, no moment where the room stilled. She simply came through the side door, deep forest green wrap dress, late pregnancy, her natural hair loose, and took a seat at the edge of the room. The specific seat of someone who had calculated the position that was least and most visible simultaneously. Thandiwe had not expected her. She watched Kiro not notice her, except that he had noticed her. Thandiwe understood this the moment she understood that his noticing was the reason the room's geometry had changed. The specific way he was now occupying the space nearest the south wall, the most removed position from where Seun was sitting, not because he had moved toward it, but because he had been careful across the past 40 minutes not to drift toward the east, two people managing a distance that did not officially exist with the precision of people who had agreed on it without speaking. He is not indifferent to her, Thandiwe thought. He is avoiding her the way you avoid something that is too heavy to carry in the wrong room. And then, she is not who I thought she was. And then Bongani was at her elbow. Second stage, he said quietly. I need you to see this. She hadn't decided to find Seun. She'd been heading somewhere else entirely, and then she was sitting across from her in a garden, and the distance between the intention and the outcome was not something she felt like examining right now. The garden smelled like cut grass and something faintly floral she couldn't name, and the shade cloth above made everything look a little softer than it actually was, the way shade always does. The tea service that Mrs. Park had arranged sat between them. The kind of gesture that meant someone had identified the situation before anyone else had identified it as a situation. She had the clipboard. She was not looking at it. Seun looked at her with the patience of a woman who had been carrying something alone for a long time and had decided that this particular person, in this particular garden, with this particular tea going cold between them, was someone she could be in the same room with without performing anything. They talked about the island, about the way the sea sounded from inside the resort rooms at night, about labor briefly with the dark humor of someone who had made peace with the mechanics of an impossible thing. Then Seun mentioned Lagos, the sound of a gate opening late at night when someone important had come home. In our neighborhood you always knew, she said, the specific sound of it. Old iron on stone. You'd stop whatever you were doing and just listen. Thandiwe stopped for 1 second. She did not understand in that moment why that detail had arrived in her chest the way it had. Not as information, but as something older, something her body recognized before her mind did. She let it sit. The man who arranged this event, Seun said, and then stopped. She looked at the tea, at the way her hands rested around the cup. He is the most thorough person I have ever met. She said it quietly, choosing the word exactly. I came here to say something. I haven't found the right way yet. She did not say anything else. The tea went cold. Thandiwe did not ask. She sat with Seun in the quiet garden until Seun looked at the light and said she needed to rest, and Thandiwe stood, and they did not embrace, and they did not exchange anything that looked like a significant moment. And then Seun was gone, and the garden was just a garden with a cold pot of tea and the sound of the sea over the wall. She had walked into that garden expecting one thing and was leaving with something she hadn't prepared for. The uncomfortable realization that she had read the situation completely wrong, and that being wrong about it was somehow not as bad as it should have been. Then she picked up the clipboard and went to find Bongani. He was waiting near the quiet corner of the reception, the event still running warmly in the background. The band shifted to something slower. He had the document on his phone, more of it now, the full version. She looked at the screen, the guest list, the financial markers, her father's name in the column, and something new, a second photograph of a different page. Handwriting, a signature she recognized from a decade of seeing it on permission forms and school reports and the bottom of careful birthday cards. Saifo Dlamini, her father had signed something. The column it appeared in was the one that corresponded to the transfer markers. She looked at the image for what felt like a long time but was probably 4 seconds. "I need the next page," she said. I couldn't access it. It was sealed physically, a separate document envelope. Across the room, she was aware of movement, the specific, deliberate movement of someone who had been watching from a distance and had now decided to stop watching. He crossed the room like a man who had never once in his life arrived somewhere and surprised anyone by showing up. He reached them and he was calm, which was the most alarming thing about him she had come to understand. His calm was not the calm of a man unaware of urgency, but of a man who had decided urgency was beneath the dignity of the response he intended to give. He took Bongani's phone from Bongani's hand, not roughly, just definitively, the way you take something that you have decided is yours to manage. He looked at the screen. He looked at Thandiwe. "Leave this with me," he said, for 15 seconds. Just 15. She felt the specific release of something she had been holding. He is here. He knows what to do. She could feel herself beginning to let go of the weight of the evening, the weight of the document, the weight of her father's name in a column she didn't understand. It felt like the sensation she had heard described once as trust, which was a thing she had spent a long time deciding she did not need. She was still in the middle of that 15 seconds when she heard it. 2 of his men, 3 feet to her left, speaking in Korean at the register of men who assumed they were in a private conversation. She didn't speak Korean. She looked at Kiro, and he was looking at the phone, and Bongani's mouth was at her ear. 1 sentence, in Zulu, very quiet. He had known about her father's connection to Junho before she arrived. He had arranged the placement through a contact. He never told her because Kiro turned back toward them. The sentence stopped. She had been keeping a small, quiet account. Nothing dramatic, just noticing things, adding them up, without ever quite admitting to herself what she was doing or why. The hand that closed, the almost smile, the clifftop, the way he had confirmed her father's location with the register of a man confirming something he intends to protect. She had been building a small, careful case. The case had just collapsed. "Thank you," she said. 2 words, professional. The warmth in her voice was exactly what it always was, which was the trick of it. She did not have to manufacture anything. She only had to keep her face doing what it had always done while something behind it went very quiet. She took the clipboard from under her arm. She turned toward the event floor. She had 4 hours left on the wedding clock. She was going to use every one of them. She had not anticipated Mrs. Park. The note from Mrs. Park arrived through a staff member. 2 words, neat handwriting. And Thandiwe had followed it without really deciding to, the way you follow the end of a sentence someone's left hanging. She had followed it because Mrs. Park was the mother of the groom's business partner, and because declining was not an option, she had evaluated seriously before finding herself on the private suite terrace with the sea below and the old woman already pouring. She offered Thandiwe a cup. Thandiwe declined. She offered again. Thandiwe declined a second time. The specific second refusal of someone who would accept on the third, a structure her grandmother had performed and her mother had performed, and she had absorbed so completely it had become involuntary. The pause between the asking and the receiving that made the receiving mean something. Mrs. Park offered a third time. She accepted. Mrs. Park sat with her own cup and looked at the sea. Her hands, Thandiwe had noticed, were always folded or wrapped around something. The hands of a woman who had spent decades finding useful occupations for hands that had wanted to reach for things they weren't offered. She looked at the sea for a long moment. Then, "The document your colleague found is not the full document. The rest of it is in the wrong hands because it was meant to be." She set the cup down slowly with both hands, like something she wasn't quite sure she was allowed to be holding and wanted to return carefully. "Enjoy the rest of the wedding," she said. Thandiwe walked back through the resort with those words doing something complicated in the part of her mind that was not managing the event, not resolving into meaning, not connecting to anything she could act on, but present the way information you cannot use, yet is present, like a key you're carrying before you found the door. The wedding was entering its final hour. She had been coordinating events in this city for 4 years, and she had never once wanted to leave one early. Tonight was different. She sat down. There was a chair and she was tired, the specific kind of tired that comes at the end of a long evening of being the most useful person in every room. And so she sat. She did not need to sit down. There was nothing on her task list that required sitting. And the music from the wedding came through the walls like something she was standing on the wrong side of, warm and muffled and belonging to someone else's evening. She picked up the event schedule and began to check items. She had already checked every item on this list. She checked them again. Because this was what she did. She had built her whole life around being the person who handled things so completely and for so long that needing anyone else had started to feel less like something she wanted and more like something she had simply gotten out of the habit of. When things got too real, she picked up the clipboard. She made herself useful. She killed the moment before it could become anything, and she called the killing professionalism, and she went home intact. He had known about her father before she arrived. She turned this over. The Clifftop, he was based in Durban, offered with the register of a courtesy, and she had accepted the courtesy, and now she understood it was not a courtesy. It was a confirmation of knowledge. The specific tone of a man who had the file before she walked into his room. Seun, the most thorough person I have ever met. Mrs. Park, the rest of it is in the wrong hands because it was meant to be. And beneath both of those voices, quieter than either, the Gardenias beginning their work of letting go, the wedding music through the wall, and the specific knowledge arriving in her chest with no drama, just arriving, the way facts arrive when you have stopped managing the room long enough for them to find you. Your name means daughter of a king. She had known this since she was 7. Her mother had told her not with ceremony, just as a fact, the way her mother told her all the important things, as if they were not important, as if they were just the texture of the world. Thandiwe, the beloved one, and your family name, Dlamini, means you come from the royal house. Your name means daughter of a king. She had carried this for 26 years, and she had spent most of them using her competence to be the kind of woman who did not require the acknowledgement of what her name meant. She didn't need to be a daughter of a king. She needed to be the most capable person in the room, a different thing entirely. And she had done it so well for so long that she had stopped noticing she had substituted one for the other and called the substitution strength. This was what Seun's presence had been showing her since the morning she arrived. Not rivalry, not complication, proof. Proof that Kiro Min was capable of the specific kind of connection that Thandiwe had decided, for her own careful protection, that he was not. That a man like him was not capable of choosing someone over the architecture of his own safety, was not capable of the quiet thoroughness of being known and choosing to know back. He was. He had been. And that knowledge was the thing she could not unwall herself against. which was why, sitting in the antechamber with the event schedule and the gardenias and the music bleeding through the wall, she made the specific decision that a woman makes when she has been fighting a feeling long enough to understand the fight is lost but is not yet ready to stop fighting. She checked the next item, and the next, and the next. She did not leave the room. The gardenias dropped another petal. Outside this door, Kiro Min was in the wedding hall, performing his role, watching the door she had walked through. He had not looked away once. If you stayed, if you are still here, in this room with her, in the gardenias and the checked twice list and the wedding music bleeding through the wall, then you understand what just happened. She did not leave. She did not confront anyone. She sat with the thing she has been running from since the morning she arrived, and she made the only decision that felt like safety. And you know, the way you know when you have watched someone use their greatest strength against themselves, that safety is not what this is. And I need you to stay for what he does before she walks back into that room. The way he is already standing without his armor before the door opens. And the way he chose that before she could choose anything. Because I have never seen a man make that kind of decision and say absolutely nothing about it. Subscribe. Share this with someone who knows exactly what it costs to be capable. Turn on the notification bell. Part 2 begins where she left off, in that room, in that silence. And it does not look away.